My sister pushed me down the stairs while pregnant at her party. My parents defended her and threatened to disown me. But years later, they showed up begging, and my husband said something they'll never forget. I'm 28 years old. I work in human resources. And I need to tell this story because what happened 5 months ago basically destroyed my family forever. I guess I should start at the beginning. When James and I had been trying to have a baby for 2 years. And honestly, those were 2 horrible years. Like the kind I wouldn't wish on anyone. We had 2 pregnancies that didn't go anywhere. 2 losses that completely broke me. And every time I saw a negative pregnancy test or when I started bleeding, I felt like a part of me died a little bit more. James was always there. You know, being the perfect husband and supporting me through everything. But I knew he was suffering too, even though he tried not to show it as much. The thing is that after the second loss, I decided I needed a mental break from the whole thing. I mean, we kept trying, but not in that obsessive way of counting days and taking tests every 5 minutes. And it turns out that, right when I stopped stressing so much, I got pregnant again. Like in March of this year, I think, or maybe late February. I don't remember exactly. When I saw the 2 lines on the test, I didn't feel that crazy excitement you're supposed to feel. I felt pure panic because I was thinking, oh God, what if I lose it again? What if my body just can't do this? So, James and I made a decision. We weren't going to tell anyone, absolutely anyone, until we were sure everything was okay. Not my family, not his parents, not our friends, nobody. And believe me, keeping that secret was super hard but necessary for my mental health. The months went by, and every doctor's appointment was like torture, waiting for them to tell me something was wrong. But miraculously, everything was going well. The baby was growing perfectly, my body was responding well, and by the time I got to 4 months, I started to allow myself to feel a little bit of hope, you know? We still hadn't told anyone, and I wore loose clothing to hide the bump that was already showing. A little. My family thought I had gained weight, basically. And I let them think that because it was easier than explaining the truth. Now, to fully understand what happened, I need to tell you about my sister, Hannah. Hannah is 3 years younger than me. She's 25, and she's always been like the golden child of the family. When we were kids, I was the responsible and boring one who got good grades and didn't get anyone in trouble, and she was the charismatic and fun one everyone adored. Don't get me wrong, I loved my sister, or at least I thought I did. But looking back, I should have realized our relationship always had something weird about it. She needed to be the center of attention all the time, and when she wasn't, she would get kind of weird with me. There were incidents when we were teenagers. Little things like her, ruining my important stuff, right before big events I had, or suddenly making up some drama on my graduation day. So everyone would be worried about her instead of celebrating me. But I always justified it, thinking, well, that's how younger sisters are, right? They seek attention. Anyway, in July, Hannah got a really important promotion at her job. Something about regional manager, or I don't know exactly what, but it was a big achievement for her. She decided to throw a party at her house to celebrate it, invited the whole family and a bunch of her friends, and obviously James and I went because, well, she was my sister, and we had to support her. I was like 4.5 months pregnant at that point, and although the bump was pretty obvious if you looked at me carefully, I wore a loose tunic-type dress and a jacket over it, thinking I could go unnoticed. The plan was to go, congratulate Hannah, stay an hour or two being polite, and then go home without drama. How naive I was. Honestly. The party was full of people. There were like 50 people there easily, everyone drinking and having a good time. My parents were super proud of Hannah. My mom wouldn't stop showing her off to everyone, and my dad was telling anyone who would listen about his youngest daughter's promotion. I was fine with that. I mean, it was Hannah's day and she deserved to shine. James and I were in the living room chatting with some cousins when my Aunt Patricia arrived, my mom's older sister, who is one of those people who has no filter and gets into everything. Patricia hugged me, and when she let go, she stared at me weird, like making a confused face, and then without saying anything, she put her hand on my belly. I froze. I literally felt my heart stop. And then Patricia, instead of asking me discreetly or I don't know, being a normal person, shouted, "Are you pregnant?" Like that, loud, so half the world could hear her. And at that moment, all the conversation around us stopped, and everyone turned to look at us. I didn't know what to do. I was just standing there like an idiot with Patricia, staring at me waiting for an answer and like 15 more people, also waiting. James squeezed my hand and I could only nod my head, and Patricia started screaming with excitement and congratulating me. And suddenly everyone was around me asking me things and congratulating me. My mom was crying. My dad hugged me super tight. And I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me because this wasn't what we wanted. It wasn't the plan. And especially it wasn't the time or place for this announcement. I looked at Hannah and she was on the other side of the room watching us. And the face she had, God, I had never seen her with that expression. She was red, like completely red, and she had her fists clenched at her sides. I tried to go toward her to explain, to apologize for ruining her party unintentionally, but she turned around and went to the second floor of her house. My mom was asking me 1,000 questions. How far along? Why hadn't I told them? If I was feeling okay? And I was trying to answer while looking at the stairs, worried about Hannah. After like 10 minutes of that chaos, I managed to get away from everyone and told James I was going upstairs to talk to Hannah, that I needed to fix this. I went up the stairs and found Hannah in her room. She had her back to the door, looking out the window. I went in and closed the door behind me and said, Hannah, I'm so sorry. I didn't want this to happen like this. I didn't want to ruin your night. She turned around, and the way she looked at me, I can honestly say it was the first time I was afraid of my sister. She said, Of course you didn't want to. Because everything always has to be about you, right, Emily? And I said, No, that's not it. I didn't even want to tell anyone yet. It was Patricia who. But she interrupted me and said, You always do this. You always find a way to steal my moment. Just like when we graduated, just like at my birthday 2 years ago when you announced your engagement, it always has to be you, the star. I tried to explain that the engagement thing had been different. That James had proposed to me that day and I hadn't planned for it to be on her birthday. That we had just gone to the family dinner with the ring already on and someone noticed it. But she wouldn't let me talk. She was yelling, saying horrible things about how I had always been mom and dad's favorite even though they tried to hide it. How I had the perfect life with my perfect husband and my stable job and now a baby. While she had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition I received effortlessly. And then she said something I will never forget. She said, Besides, you'll probably lose it just like the other two. So I don't even know why we're celebrating this. I was speechless. I mean, completely paralyzed because I couldn't believe that my sister, my own sister, had just said that. I felt my eyes burning with tears and I said, How can you say something like that? How can you be so cruel? And she just laughed in a way that gave me chills and said, The truth hurts, doesn't it? I tried to leave, turn around and get out of there because I knew if I stayed I was going to start crying for real. But when I was opening the door to leave, Hannah grabbed my arm and pulled me back. I stumbled, like I lost my balance, and I told her to let me go. What was wrong with her? And then she pushed me. I don't know exactly how it happened. Everything was so fast. But she pushed me with both hands on my shoulders right when I was at the top of the stairs. I felt like I was flying, literally, and then I was rolling, hitting myself against the steps, and the only thing I thought while falling was the baby. My baby. Please let the baby be okay. I landed on the landing halfway down the stairs, and the pain in my left wrist was instant, like someone had set it on fire. I heard screams, a lot of people screaming, and James got there first. He was kneeling beside me asking if I could move, if I was okay, and I could only say, The baby. James, the baby. Someone called an ambulance and everything after that is kind of blurry. I remember I looked up the stairs and Hannah was standing there watching us with an expression I can't describe. Like shock but also something else. Satisfaction maybe? I don't know. My parents were trying to help me. My mom was crying hysterically, and I was on the hallway floor of my sister's house with a wrist that was clearly broken waiting for the ambulance to arrive and praying, literally begging God or the universe or whoever wanted to listen to me that my baby would be okay. At the hospital, they did 1,000 tests on me. X-rays of my wrist that was indeed fractured, and an ultrasound of the baby that was the longest half hour of my life. James was holding my good hand and I couldn't stop shaking. When the doctor finally said the baby was okay, that the heart was beating strong and there were no signs of problems, I started crying like never before in my life. James was crying too, and we stayed there hugging while they put a cast on my wrist. The doctor said I had been very lucky, that falling downstairs while pregnant could have resulted in something much worse, and that I was going to need rest and close monitoring the following weeks. My parents arrived at the hospital like an hour later, and that's when things got even weirder and more horrible. My mom came in crying, asking how the baby and I were, and my dad looked super serious and worried. But when James told them exactly what happened, that Hannah had deliberately pushed me, their expressions changed. My mom said it must have been an accident, that Hannah wouldn't do something like that I had probably tripped by myself and imagined it wrong because of stress. And I said, "Mom, no. She pushed me. She grabbed me and pushed me because she was angry." And my dad literally said, "Hannah is going through a difficult time. She doesn't need you accusing her of this right now." I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was there in a hospital bed with my arm in a cast after my sister threw me down some stairs while pregnant, and my parents were defending her. James got furious, started saying they were going to call the police, that what Hannah did was a crime, assault, or whatever it's called legally, and my parents got worse. My dad said that if we involved the police, they would never forgive us, that we were destroying the family, and my mom begged me to let it go, that it was an accident, that Hannah hadn't done it on purpose. But I knew the truth. I had seen her face. I had heard what she said to me about my previous losses, and I knew perfectly well that she had done it on purpose. I told them to leave, to please leave the hospital because I didn't want to see them at that moment, and after more drama, they finally left. A police officer came to take my statement because apparently the hospital is obligated to report these types of incidents when they involve a pregnant person, and I told them everything. Absolutely everything. James added that there were people at the party who could corroborate that Hannah was angry, that they had seen us go up to the room, all that. The officer said they were going to investigate, and that Hannah would probably be arrested soon. He asked me if I wanted to proceed with criminal charges, and I, honestly, hesitated for a moment because I knew what it meant, but James squeezed my hand and said, "She could have killed our son. Emily, this can't be let go." And he was right. Completely right. I left the hospital the next day with strict instructions for rest, a follow-up appointment with my obstetrician for the next week, and a wrist that was going to be in a cast for at least 6 weeks. The following days were a nightmare of calls and messages from my family. My mom called me crying, telling me to reconsider the police thing, that Hannah had admitted she pushed me, but that she did it without thinking, that she was so sorry, that please don't ruin her life with a criminal record. My dad sent me a message saying, and I have this saved because I couldn't believe it when I read it, saying that if I proceeded with the charges, he was going to disinherit me, and that they didn't want to hear from me ever again, that I had to choose between my sister or being out of the family forever. James told me not to respond to them, that they weren't worth it, but I was devastated. I mean, they had just chosen the daughter who had physically attacked me while pregnant over me and their grandson, who hadn't even been born yet. Hannah was arrested like 3 days after the incident. We found out through a message from my Aunt Patricia that basically said we were destroying the family and that we were horrible people. I blocked almost everyone from my side of the family at that point because I couldn't deal with more hate messages when I was supposed to be the victim here. The legal process was long and exhausting. Hannah got a lawyer who tried to argue it had been an accident, that I had tripped during an argument, that there was no intention to cause me harm. But there was evidence. The testimonies of people at the party who had seen Hannah angry. My testimony about what she said to me about my previous losses. The fact that she had grabbed me and pushed me from the top of some stairs. In the end, like 3 months later, Hannah accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to probation. She had to go to mandatory anger management therapy, do community service, and pay all my medical bills from the incident that weren't covered by insurance. We also got a restraining order that said she couldn't come within 100 meters of me or James. During all that time, my parents didn't talk to me even once, not even to ask how the baby was or if I was okay. My mom sent messages to James from time to time asking about the pregnancy, but never directly to me. The months went by and I continued with my life as best I could. The pregnancy continued without problems, thank God, and my wrist healed well, although it still hurts when it's going to rain. James was incredible during all that time. He never left me alone, never suggested that maybe I should try to reconcile with my family. He just completely supported me in every decision. Like 3 weeks ago, I gave birth to a beautiful and healthy baby, a boy who weighed 7 pounds and who is literally the most perfect thing I've ever seen in my life. We named him Matthew James. And when I held him in my arms for the first time, I thought that after all the hell of last year, I finally had my happy ending, you know? James and I were in our new parent bubble, exhausted, but happy, learning to change diapers and waking up every 3 hours to feed him. And then 2 days ago, the doorbell rang. James went to answer, because I was breastfeeding Matthew, and I heard voices at the entrance that I recognized immediately. My parents. They had come unannounced, without calling first. Nothing. James came back to the living room and told me, "Your parents are here. They say they want to meet their grandson." I froze with Matthew in my arms. I hadn't seen them in 5 months, since the hospital, and suddenly they were showing up like nothing had happened, wanting to meet the baby I almost lost because of their other daughter. The daughter they defended instead of defending me. James went out again to talk to them, and I could hear my mom begging, saying he was their grandson, that they had a right to see him, that please don't keep them away. But James told them exactly what they needed to hear. He told them that when I had to choose between protecting my son or having a relationship with you, I chose my son, just like you chose Hannah over us. He told them they weren't welcome in our house, that if they tried to contact us again, we were going to get another restraining order, and to leave before he called the police. My mom started crying, but my dad grabbed her by the arm and they left. I watched them from the window get in their car and drive away. And honestly, I didn't feel anything. Not sadness or relief, just like a weird emptiness. Matthew made a little noise and looked at me with those huge eyes he has, and I thought, this is my world now. This baby and James, that's my family. Not the people who turned their backs on me when I needed them most. Not the sister who tried to hurt me and my son. Not the parents who threatened to disinherit me for pressing charges against my attacker. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. If I should have forgiven. If I should try to rebuild those relationships for Matthew's sake. But then I remember rolling down those stairs, begging for my baby to survive, and I know I made the right decision. I don't know what's going to happen next. If my parents are going to try to contact us again, if someday Hannah is going to really admit what she did and why she did it, but for now I'm okay with how things are. Or at least, that's what I tell myself.